Well, friends, one of the two gag orders that judges imposed on Donald Trump is on a brief pause, pending appeal. So what should we be looking for next? Well, other than Donald Trump taking advantage of the pause to threaten witnesses, endanger court staff, and call prosecutors deranged thugs? Let's talk about that, because justice matters. Hey all, Glenn Kirshner here. So friends, recently I've been seeing the question pop up, what happened to the Trump gag order in his federal case in Washington, D.C., the gag order that was imposed by Judge Tanya Chutkan, the gag order that is designed to stop Donald Trump from talking about or posting about, thereby endangering the witnesses against him, the court staff, Jack Smith and his team. Well, last Friday, the U.S. Court of Appeals for the D.C. Circuit issued an administrative stay, a temporary pause. The appellate court has set an oral argument for November 20th. I'll be in court that day. I'll attend the argument, and I'll do a Justice Matters video that evening talking about how the argument sort of played out and whether the appellate court judges sort of showed their hand at all, as demonstrated by the questions they had for the parties. But ever since this story broke about a week ago, I've been wanting to do a Justice Matters video on one particular aspect of the gag order, the appeal, the administrative stay, and the three appellate court judges who will preside over this appeal. So friends, let's start with the reporting regarding the appeal of the gag order. This from Josh Gerstein and Kyle Cheney of Politico. Headline, Appeals Court temporarily lifts Trump gag order in D.C. case. And that article begins, a federal appeals court on Friday, last Friday, lifted a gag order reining in Donald Trump's comments about the criminal election subversion case pending against him in Washington. At the former president's request, a three-judge panel of the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals temporarily lifted U.S. District Court Judge Tanya Chutkan's order prohibiting Trump from using his public statements to target the special counsel, Jack Smith and his team, court officials, and potential witnesses in the case. The appeals court's action makes it likely that the gag order, which Trump contends violates his First Amendment rights and those of his supporters, will be sidelined for more than 2 weeks and perhaps longer. Now, friends, I first learned about this legal development, that the appellate court would be taking up the gag order on appeal and put a temporary stay in place. I first learned about that via a tweet. It's kind of how we learn so much of our breaking news these days. It was a tweet by Anna Bauer, who is a legal journalist and a correspondent for the online site Lawfare. And here is what Anna Bauer tweeted. Just in, Trump's D.C. gag order temporarily stayed by D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals. The panel, meaning the three-judge panel who will sit and hear the appeal, the panel includes Judge Millett, parens Obama, Judge Pillard, parens Obama, and Judge Garcia, parens Biden. And the tweet contained a picture of a portion of the appellate court's order. You can see it there. Upon consideration of the emergency motion for a stay pending appeal, which includes requests for an administrative stay and to expedite the appeal, it is hereby ordered that the district court's October 17, 2023 order, the gag order, be administratively stayed pending further order of the court. And the appellate court goes on to set oral argument for 9:30 a.m. on November 20th, 2023. Now, friends, frankly, I was glad that the tweet included information about which president appointed each of these three judges who would now be presiding over a legal case involving Donald Trump. But it's pretty disheartening that this is where we now find ourselves. Each time a new federal judge enters the picture, because that person will be involved in some aspect of Trump-related litigation, we instantly ask ourselves, who appointed that judge? I can tell you, friends, it never used to be that way. I understand why it is now, and we'll talk about that in a minute. But if you'll indulge me, I want to share my personal experience as a former career prosecutor appearing before lots and lots of presidentially appointed judges. You may know that across the United States of America, in each of the criminal jurisdictions, each of the 50 states, judges end up being judges in different ways. Some are elected. Some are appointed by the governor of the state. But in Washington, D.C., because D.C. is not a state, that's something we should work to change. But because it's not a state, there is no governor to appoint the judge, and the judges aren't elected. You know how you become a judge in Washington, D.C., not just in federal court, as is true nationwide. In federal court, all judges are appointed by the President of the United States, whether you're a federal trial court judge, a federal appellate court judge, or a Supreme Court justice. But in D.C., in the local criminal court, the local court in D.C., it is the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. It's the local city court, just like Manhattan has a local city court, and Brooklyn and Philadelphia, Chicago, Detroit, D.C., Superior Court is no different, with one exception. The judges, the 61 judges who presently sit on the bench in the D.C. Superior Court are presidentially appointed because there is no governor and they're not elected. So over the course of my decades as a federal prosecutor practicing in the courts of Washington, D.C., I am sure I appeared before well over 50 judges, and that includes federal trial court judges in D.C., appellate court judges in the D.C. Circuit Court of Appeals, all of the dozens and dozens, 61 at this moment, judges who sit on the Superior Court of the District of Columbia. And even though I appeared before so many presidentially appointed judges for my entire career, you know what I never did? Not once. When I received a new assignment, a new case, and I saw the name of the judge who would preside over the case, or when I walked into court for the first time and I met face-to-face a presidentially appointed judge that I never met before, that I never had a case before, you know what I never once asked myself? Which president appointed this judge? It just was not even in my consciousness to ask that question. I didn't care, and it didn't matter. In practice, it never seemed to matter until the age of Donald Trump. What I want to do, friends, is just for a few minutes talk about the difference between the Obama administration and the way they appointed federal judges, nominated federal judges, and the Trump administration and the way Mitch McConnell and Donald Trump selected federal judges. This will be short, I promise, but stick with me here for a minute. You may know that the ABA, the American Bar Association, is in the practice of rating judges. When a judge is nominated to a position on the federal bench, lifetime tenure. If you are confirmed as a federal judge, you get lifetime tenure. Talk about a plum assignment. Talk about a sweetheart job. Lifetime tenure when you're appointed as a federal judge. And when a president appoints or makes it known that he will appoint or nominate a particular person to serve on the federal bench, to enjoy that lifetime appointment, the American Bar Association will rate that judge. And there are only 3 ratings under the ABA's system: well qualified, qualified, or not qualified. Now, friends, first of all, the Trump administration virtually cut out the American Bar Association. They weren't interested in hearing about, whether their judicial nominees were qualified or not. Trump and Mitch McConnell paid little or no attention to the ABA. But the ABA went ahead and rated every judge, every federal judge that Trump nominated anyway. And guess what? You probably already know where I'm going with this, friends. Some of the Trump nominated judges were rated as not qualified to be federal judges, certainly not qualified to enjoy life tenure as a federal court judge. These people would be presiding over civil cases, over criminal cases, in a very real sense, presiding over the lives of others. And many of them were rated not qualified. And Donald Trump and Mitch McConnell didn't care. Trump nominated them anyway, and Mitch McConnell crammed them down America's throat, virtually on party line votes each and every time. And now there are several not qualified judges sitting on the federal bench. Let's look at how the Obama administration nominated judges. When President Obama was considering nominating a certain person to the federal bench, he would ask the American Bar Association for their opinion, for their rating. Sometimes they would come back and tell the president, we're rating this person not qualified. You know how many times President Obama went on to nominate a judge or a person to the federal bench that the ABA had rated not qualified? You know how many times? 0. Because if you're not qualified to serve as a federal judge, you probably shouldn't serve as a federal judge. And if you're the president, you sure shouldn't nominate that person to serve as a federal judge. President Obama understood that, and he refused to degrade the quality of the federal bench, and Trump and McConnell celebrated the degradation of the federal bench, up to and including the U.S. Supreme Court. Courtesy of some of Donald Trump's appointees to the Supreme Court, women had their constitutional privacy rights revoked. Minorities no longer had any hope of being on equal educational footing because affirmative action programs were killed. And of course now, sort of state accepted discrimination against the LGBTQ plus community is just fine. Businesses can now discriminate with the full backing of a handful of justices on the Supreme Court, several of whom were appointed by Donald Trump. So, yeah, being qualified to serve on the federal bench in any capacity, trial court, appellate court, Supreme Court, kind of matters. But friends, here we are. Yes, every time we learn that another federal judge will be involved in some aspect of presiding over Trump-related litigation, we ask ourselves the question, what president appointed that judge? And of course, friends, what will Donald Trump claim if, when, the 3-judge panel rules against him on the gag order issue? Oh, they're all angry Democrats appointed by Democrat presidents. It's a witch hunt. It's election interference. No fair. They had it in for me. This is where we are, friends. And, we have to work hard every day to try to climb out of the very deep hole in which Donald Trump, Mitch McConnell, and others have put the American people. We have to do what we can to try to restore the integrity of the federal bench. Joe Biden has gone a long way. He has appointed lots and lots of qualified, well-qualified people to the federal bench. And, we have our work cut out for us. But as I always say, friends, fighting for justice is both exhausting and energizing. And as you've probably heard me say before, justice matters. Friends, as always, please stay safe, please stay tuned, and I look forward to talking with you all again tomorrow.